Hey there, welcome to the Perennial Pride podcast. So thanks for joining me on this episode. And at the time of this recording, and I'm doing this one by myself today, there's a lot of craze around Powerball. This thing that's grown into the billions, right? We're talking about billions with a B. And so it's a crazy number to even think about, but it's fun, right? Because you can join ties with your coworkers or friends and buy some tickets, and you could talk about cool things you do if you actually won the lottery. And even though it's like, I think the odds are something astronomical, like 1 in 250 million chance of winning. So it's crazy, but it's still fun to think about, right? And it's, even though most people will never in their lifetime even get close to winning this thing, you can't win if you're not playing. So I guess you throw a couple of dollars in there and hopefully you can maybe get some money out of it, maybe, but someone's got to win, I guess, right? But, I'm a guy that's rooted in math, so I recognize how the odds are stacked against us to win. But anyway, it's still fun. And, people talking about taking trips or, getting rid of their debt or, buying an island, whatever it is, it's fun noise and enjoyment to think about. But, this is not a certainty, and it's probably actually the opposite. It's almost certain to not happen. But anyway, so it's a positive thing, for some people to dream about it. But as in my world, thinking about certainties and planning for things that are going to happen, one of the things I always have to plan for is when we will leave this earth. So we have no idea when any of us will leave this earth, but we all leave at some point, and that's a certainty that we need to plan for or think about. And so obviously the typical advice is to hold insurance for while we're in our younger years, when we're working, we have kids, we have a lot of expenses, mortgages and colleges that have to pay for if something happens to us, and how are we going to afford that to meet the needs of our family. So that's bare minimum. But on this channel, we're trying to really help expand your mind and think about how can we have more from this. And this is where you have to expand your mind and think about it, not just as insurance, right, to protect our lives, our number one asset, but what if it could be an asset, and an asset that you can have for the rest of your life and will protect against an absolute certain event in your lifetime? We just don't know when it will happen. And so usually when I ask somebody, if you knew next week you were going to leave this earth, how much protection and insurance would you want for your family? Inevitably, everyone says the maximum amount. But they just don't have it today. And most people don't. And one of the reasons I get for a lot of people is I don't want to enrich my kids, or, I don't want, always hear the joke, now I'm worth more dead than alive. Well, that's actually can happen. Insurance companies won't insure you for more than you're valued, just like they wouldn't insure a house for twice the amount and then you burn it down or something weird happens to it. So you can never be overinsured. But the bigger sort of beef around this is I don't want to just give a whole bunch of money to my heirs and I'm not going to get to use it really in my lifetime. I think that second piece is really the heart of it, is that I'm having to sacrifice my life on this earth, my retirement or later years of my life, so that I can give more to my beneficiaries, my spouse, my kids. And that's really the rub. And so I think until people see it, what if you could actually have both, where you can maximize your life on this earth and pass on a significant amount of wealth to those who are left behind? I think most people would buy into that if they understood how. And so today I'm going to cover some just basic concepts around how can you actually use and benefit from having death benefit while you're alive, not only when you pass, because that's typically what most people think about. So I'm going to cover some key areas. So the first one, this really gets back to how do we coordinate our assets across all the different things we own, and how do they work better together? Oftentimes the typical advice will be centered on analyzing one investment or insurance or account individually. But really at the heart of it is that these things can work better together if understood how. And so when we're thinking about retirement, and most people are going to equate it to a 401k, IRA, a retirement account, So let's just start there. So you're building up a large retirement account in an IRA or 401k, whatever that amount is, let's just call it $1 million. And so the typical advice is just draw interest off of that. That $1 million, I could earn, let's just say 4%. And I can take that $40,000 and take that every year and kind of never run the risk or have very low risk of ever running out. That's the typical simplistic approach. And it doesn't sound that great, right? To have $1 million asset, but only be able to use, say, $40,000 from it every year. Now, that's obviously simplistic and is a starting point, but that's usually the typical advice. So what if you had something similar to that, say that same asset, but you had a death benefit of $1 million? Imagine that scenario. Would that change the way you spend your investment dollars? Is those dollars tied to, say, your 401k? And of course it would, because now you have a backstop of additional dollars that are going to come to your family's life after you pass. So maybe you can use more of that asset, right, while you're living. And so in those scenarios, having that additional money, even if it's a lower amount, you could use more of it. And because you can spend that down, not just the interest, but the principal as well, you're going to likely spend less in taxes over time, right? Because those dollars are slowing down a little bit, right? And you're using them, right? You want to use them. But for a lot of people, you don't want to use them, so that dollar stays big. So when you start taking money out in that larger asset account, you're going to have likely more taxes. And so that's one piece. And then the second piece, for some that are holding them in accounts where there's a management fee, those management fees are constantly still being applied to these larger dollar amounts as well. And so that's eking some funds from your account over time. And that's part of the strategy, to keep it in there for long periods of time so fees can be taken from them. So in this scenario, in our scenario, is you can draw it down and spend it down, the principal and interest. And knowing that you have another asset that's going to make its appearance to help your family out, and you got to enjoy more of your other asset you built up all through your lifetime anyway. So that's just one simplistic option. And obviously buried in there too is this concept of a buffer asset. We won't go too detailed into that. Maybe another episode will go into that. But obviously in days like today, when we have massive volatility in the market and you need to draw from, say, a retirement account that's tied to market-based assets, the worst time to take money from assets that are losing is when they're losing, right? You don't take them then. You let them regrow. Well, here you can use your whole life insurance cash as an alternative source of non-correlated assets that have no bearing on the market. You could use them while your other assets get to regrow. This is how they can help each other be better. So we'll go more on that into another episode. So a second way to use your death benefit while you're living is through how we use the dividends that are tied to our life insurance policy, our whole life policy, as well as being able to sell some of the life insurance repurchase. So let's just start with dividends. Well, dividends are not guaranteed, but they have been paid over 100 plus years. And as you're building up your asset, your whole life policy, you want to use those dividends to likely buy some more insurance. And so later in life, you can change that course and you can start taking those dividends as tax-free income up to all the money you put into this policy first. And so you can do that early and later in life, and you can stop making premium contributions if you want, but you have dividends coming in to you tax-free, and you can use them however you wish, and they're off the books and they're not taxable. The other part of it too is you purchased additional life insurance along the way using the paid up addition rider that we can teach you through your family banking policy. You can sell off portions of that death benefit and turn them into cash. And so you can sell them off along the way. So that's another option. It definitely reduces your death benefit and your cash, but you're using some of that money while you're living. So it's a benefit for you now to be able to generate some other source of income and cash that is not taxable. So you can use that all through retirement, and you don't have to take them out. You take them out when you want to. So that's another option, is to sell kind of pieces of your death benefit while you're living. Just like you were living in a house, well, the only way you get to extract the value of your house is to sell it or get which we'll get into in a second, some other options, but to sell that house. But here you're taking all pieces of the house or the death benefit and selling them to be able to use and consume during retirement. So that's number two. So the third one, and I kind of already alluded to a little bit, is utilizing a reverse mortgage. A lot of people have a lot of principal and equity tied into their homes when they're in the later stages of life, and because they don't want a mortgage. And I get that. You don't want to go into debt while you're in your retirement. Well, how do you extract the value out of that asset? Well, one is a home equity line of credit, but they don't have to give that to you. But that's one way. Another way is a reverse mortgage, where you get rid of any debt. You're basically taking on debt and using your home equity as a source to get a loan, and you can use those dollars without any tax implication, and you can have a growing line of credit. We're going to have someone on soon to talk a little bit about that, but you can and then you can actually stop your mortgage payment. And so now you're living in the house that you're had funds or getting a steady stream of cash, but you have a debt building up. And so having a whole life insurance policy with a death benefit gives you options. You can actually use that death benefit to either, pay off the debt when you pass, so you can use more of your house money, right, while you're living, or you can say give the people who are remaining, your beneficiaries, can allow the bank to take over your home, and they can have the tax-free asset from the death benefit. So they have options, though, but it allows you to better utilize your other assets because you have the death benefit in place. Fourth option is this concept of pensions. And I know a lot of people have pensions these days, but there are still some. And so there's often a choice where you have a pension. You have to determine if you're going to get a maxed annuity, or you're going to take a lower amount with the idea that if you pass, your spouse will get that same payment going forward. Well, if done strategically, you can set this up where you have the maximum amount you can get from your pension as a sole person. So that poses a risk to your spouse, because if you pass early in, say, retirement, while you start taking the pension, there won't be any continual payouts. Well, the way to combat this is to have the insurance on the other side, right? So you can take the max while you're living, and hopefully you do live as long as you hope to. But if you don't, then the death benefit can come and supply more tax-free resources to those who are left. So the next one I want to go through quickly, this concept of a charitable remainder trust. And I'm not going to go into too crazy detail here. We have estate planners who will help us along here, but just to give you a sense of it, if you have any assets, whether they be business, they could be real estate, they could be capital gains tied to the stock market. You have significant gains. The problem is if you sell them, you're going to likely be taxed, and potentially very heavily, and that will cause some issues for some folks. So the way a charitable remainder trust can work is that those assets that have a significant gain to them can be used to donate to a cause and create a steady stream for you while you're living. And so you can benefit from that and get a deduction on your taxes because you're donating a portion of your assets. And so this is what an alternative to selling the asset. So you don't realize that tax hit. You can donate this asset and then get a stream of income. And then when you pass, that asset does go to charity. You have donated it. However, this is where having the life insurance in play is key, because that can supplement and provide for your heirs after you have passed, and you've also extracted a significant amount of income from that asset and not having to pay tax on it, right, for all the gains. So you can shield some gains from taxation, give money to a charity you care about, which is great. And then you have the death benefit on top of it that will come to be able to support your beneficiaries on after. So even though you have it, it's really maximizing the use of your other assets. And then the last two are straightforward. One being you could annuitize your life insurance policy. So you can take your cash and you can create a stream of income that you can't outlive. So you can use that and basically surrender their life insurance policy essentially and turn it into an annuity. So you get that to use during retirement. And then lastly, there's little known additions to certain policies. They call them chronic illness or terminal illness. So if you chronic illness probably equates to more like a long-term care issue where you're unable to do a couple of the basic sort of activities in life, like bathe or feed yourself. So you might need long-term care. Well, if that has happened to you, most policies now have them as a rider or they're already included into the base policies, an option to use your death benefit to help pay for those things like long-term care. It is not pure long-term care, so I don't want people to be confused by that, but it could be used to supplement that and provide your death benefit early in life because they assume that if you get in that situation, you probably don't have many more years to live. And so you get to use that death benefit while you're living. And secondly, if you were diagnosed with a terminal illness, they allow you to use your death benefit while you're alive and to hopefully to enjoy as much as possible the remaining days on earth here and help support the family as they prep for this change. So these are just some of the ways. I know I went through a ton of different options here. If any of them, if you want to learn more about them, certainly reach out to me. I'd love to chat about how they may help you or in your situation. But it's just really about kind of opening up eyes to understand that, we've been taught a certain way around how to leverage life insurance, and it's only a protection play. But reality, if understood, it's a very powerful asset that can really help coordinate with other assets you own so that they can maximize not only what you're doing while you're on this earth, but also for the next generation, so you can have your cake and eat it too. So certainly reach out. Hope this was helpful. Certainly share your comments, thoughts. Love to hear what you're thinking, and so I can make these even more valuable as we go forward. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for joining me on this episode today. I really am grateful for you as listeners to the Perennial Pride podcast. I hope you're getting some tremendous value out of it and hopefully pushing you along your journey to financial freedom. I put this podcast together really to help you get more educated around your finances so that you feel empowered to live the life that you really want. And if you like the content that you heard today or watched, then I would encourage you to go to my website, perennialpride.com. There's tons of other content there. And you can access my book, Wealth Beyond the Numbers. You can buy it there on my website. It's a aggregation of a lot of great tips and tools I've learned to not only build my wealth in my accounts, but build wealth in my life and abundance and joy, and something that has a lot of my experiences in the journey that I've been on personally. Hopefully that can be also of value to you as you sort of move forward. So thanks again for being a Perennial Pride listener, and we'll see you on the next episode.